The jungle air was thick with tension. A muffled cry echoed in the distance, sharp and panicked, cutting through the quiet of the darkened forest. Emma froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The sound was unmistakable, an elephant in distress. She couldn't waste a second. Without hesitation, she grabbed her flashlight, its beam slicing through the dark trees, and rushed toward the noise. The rustle of leaves beneath her boots felt deafening in the silence that followed. A shrill snap of metal pierced the night as she stumbled upon the source. A massive elephant, caught in a steel snare, its leg bleeding and twisted in unnatural angles. The animal's eyes met hers, wide with terror. Time was running out. Emma needed to act now, before it was too late. The relief was short-lived. A low growl rumbled through the jungle. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She turned quickly, her flashlight sweeping the area. Something was moving in the underbrush. The growl came again, louder this time. It wasn't the wind. Emma tensed, knowing that a predator was nearby. The elephant was still shaking, its leg not yet fully healed from the snare. Emma didn't have time to think. She grabbed the animal's tusk, trying to steady it, but its fear was palpable. Another growl echoed closer now, cutting through the air. Emma's pulse quickened. Whatever it was getting closer. The stakes had just risen again. She had to get the elephant to safety, fast. The growls grew louder. Emma's hand moved instinctively to her sidearm, but she knew it wouldn't help against whatever was out there. The predator wasn't just a threat to the elephant, it was a threat to her as well. Emma glanced over her shoulder, scanning the dense underbrush. The jungle felt like it was closing in on them. She spoke softly to the elephant, trying to calm it, but the animal's fear was contagious. It shifted uneasily on its feet. The growls turned into snarls, then the snap of a branch. Emma froze, eyes darting. A shape emerged from the shadows, a large, predatory figure, its eyes glowing in the darkness. The jungle had its own rules, and they were about to be tested. Emma's thoughts raced. She had to think fast. The jaguar was circling them now, moving slowly, calculating. If she ran, it would chase. If she stayed still, it would attack. There was no perfect choice. Her breath shallow, Emma whispered to the elephant, "Stay calm, stay calm." Her voice trembled despite her best efforts. The predator was closing in, its eyes fixed on the injured elephant, a vulnerable target. Emma's gaze shifted between the jaguar and the elephant. She wasn't just saving one life tonight. She was saving both. The jaguar lunged. It was fast, but Emma reacted faster. With a swift motion, she pushed the elephant aside, grabbing a nearby branch and swinging it in front of the jaguar's snapping jaws. The animal skidded back, its low growls reverberating through the trees. Emma's pulse hammered in her chest. The elephant was panicked, its leg still weak. She needed to act quickly, or they would both be dead. The jaguar circled, looking for another opportunity. Emma was trapped between the jaguar and a wounded elephant, and there was nowhere to go. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she prepared for the next move. With the jaguar retreating into the shadows, Emma breathed a sigh of relief, though her pulse was still racing. She glanced at the elephant, whose breathing was shallow and erratic. Its leg was still bleeding, and its movements were slow and unsteady. Emma's heart ached. She had seen the toll this rescue had already taken on the animal. The jungle was merciless, but so was her mission. Emma whispered softly to the elephant, "We're not done yet, stay with me." Her voice trembled, betraying the uncertainty in her chest. She had faced many rescues before, but none had felt so personal. The elephant's injury seemed to mirror her own scars, from a past that was too painful to recall. The weight of this mission, the fear of failure, the memory of the one she couldn't save, it all rushed back to her. The elephant shifted its weight, meeting her eyes. And in that moment, Emma knew this rescue meant more than just saving a life. It was about redemption. As Emma began to assess the elephant's injuries, her mind wandered back to a moment from her past. Years ago, she had been part of a similar mission, one that had ended in failure. She had tried to save a different elephant, a younger one, caught in a similar trap. The memory was haunting. She had been too slow, too unsure, and the animal had died in her arms. Emma shook her head, trying to push the thought away. She couldn't afford to dwell on the past. This elephant was still alive, and she wouldn't make the same mistake again. As she continued working, she noticed the jaguar's tracks nearby. The predator had circled too close for comfort. Emma's eyes narrowed. There was no time to waste. The jungle was an unpredictable beast, and now, more than ever, Emma had to act decisively. The sound of movement in the underbrush startled Emma once more. Her hand instinctively reached for her sidearm again, but she knew it wasn't enough. The jungle had its own rules, and weapons were only temporary solutions. As the noise grew closer, Emma stood up, cautiously backing toward a nearby tree. The elephant, still shaking from fear, followed her lead. Emma's heart raced as she realized the predator wasn't the only danger they were facing. The real threat was time. Every minute spent in the open brought them closer to exposure, closer to death. The animal's leg was injured, and she couldn't keep running indefinitely. She needed to make a choice. Should she continue her rescue attempt, risking their safety, or should she find shelter and wait for backup? The decision weighed heavily on her. A rustling in the bushes broke the silence, and Emma spun around, drawing her sidearm. But the silhouette that emerged wasn't a predator. It was Lucas, an old colleague from her wildlife rescue days. His face was grim, covered in dirt and sweat, but his presence was a welcome relief. "You shouldn't be here," Emma said, still catching her breath. Lucas stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "You need backup. The storm's coming and you're not alone out here." His voice was steady, though the concern in his eyes was clear. Emma hesitated. She knew Lucas had always been a reliable ally, but the last thing she wanted was to risk anyone else's life. Yet, as the storm clouds gathered above, Emma realized she couldn't do this alone. They had to move quickly. The storm hit suddenly, rain pouring down in heavy sheets, making it nearly impossible to see. The jungle transformed into a maze of slippery mud and wet branches. Emma and Lucas worked quickly, trying to stabilize the elephant's leg. The task was daunting. The animal's pain was escalating, and the storm was making it harder to focus. Emma's heart raced as she realized that even though they were no longer alone, the jungle was becoming even more dangerous. The thunder roared, the wind howled, and the jungle seemed to fight back at every step. Yet through it all, Emma remained focused. The elephant's survival depended on her, and Lucas now, as well. The rain had not let up, and the jungle was now a quagmire of thick mud and slippery roots. The storm was relentless, making it nearly impossible to move with speed. Emma wiped the water from her face, frustration evident in her eyes. The elephant's leg was still swollen, and it could barely stand. Lucas was trying to help, but the mud was slowing them down, and time was running out. The storm had caused the river to rise, blocking their only route to safety. Emma stood up, her heart sinking as she realized that even with Lucas's help, they might not make it in time. "We need to get to higher ground," she said, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. The storm was turning into a full-fledged monsoon, and if they didn't move fast, they would be trapped here with no escape. "Come on," she urged, taking the elephant's tusk again, guiding it through the slippery terrain. They couldn't wait any longer. Every minute they spent on this path, the chances of survival dwindled. As they moved forward, Emma heard the distant sound of something crashing through the jungle. Her heart sank. "Not again," she whispered. There were too many risks in these conditions, an injured elephant, a storm, and now potential threats lurking in the shadows. She motioned for Lucas to stay close. They couldn't afford any distractions. The elephant's exhaustion was becoming more apparent with every step. It was limping now, dragging its injured leg, and it was clear the animal couldn't continue much longer. Emma bit her lip, steeling herself for the next challenge. They had no choice but to keep moving. As she glanced up at Lucas, she could see the doubt in his eyes. The storm, the jaguar, the terrain, It was all stacking against them. But there was no turning back. "We're almost there," she lied, trying to convince both him and herself. The elephant's survival depended on them, but in this weather, she wasn't sure how much longer they could push forward. The jungle grew quieter for a moment, as if holding its breath. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The air was thick with humidity, and the sounds of the storm drowned out everything except for the steady, laborious breathing of the elephant. But then she heard it, a twig snapping in the underbrush. Emma froze, her heart pounding. Lucas looked over at her, his eyes widening as he motioned to the left. A figure stepped out from behind a tree, its eyes glowing in the low light. It wasn't a jaguar this time. It was something much worse. A large, hostile group of poachers had found them. Emma's mind raced. They were trapped. Lucas, seeing the look in her eyes, immediately moved into a protective stance. "Stay behind me," he muttered. But Emma wasn't the type to hide. She moved forward, ready to face whatever came next. "We don't want trouble," one of the poachers called out, his voice rough but not threatening, yet the rifle slung across his shoulder made it clear they were in control. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady but firm. "Then leave," she snapped. "This is a protected area." The poacher laughed, his voice low and menacing. "It's too late for that. We're not here to talk." The group of poachers moved closer, their intentions clear. Emma knew they couldn't negotiate their way out of this. The poachers would stop at nothing to capture the elephant for illegal trade. They were outnumbered, and the elephant, already on the brink, couldn't run. The storm raged on, but the real battle was about to begin. Emma looked at Lucas, a silent agreement passing between them. There was no choice. They would have to fight. A sudden shout broke the tension, and chaos erupted. Lucas lunged toward one of the poachers, but before he could make contact, the sound of gunfire echoed through the jungle. Emma ducked instinctively, heart hammering in her chest. The bullet missed, but it was a warning shot. She looked around, searching for any advantage, but the jungle was thick and confining. The poachers moved in quickly, their weapons raised. Emma's pulse raced as she grabbed a nearby branch, ready to defend herself and the elephant at any cost. This was no longer just about rescuing the animal. It was about survival. The storm grew fiercer, lightning flashing across the sky, but Emma knew that the only way out now was through. They had to fight. As the rain continued to pour, the tension with the poachers reached its peak. Emma stood her ground, facing the leader of the poacher group, who was still gripping his rifle with a menacing calm. But something was off. The poacher's eyes flickered toward the elephant, and Emma sensed a shift. "You're not here for the elephant, are you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. The leader smirked, the hint of something darker in his gaze. "No, we're not. We've been following you for a while, Emma," he said, his voice low. The words hit her like a blow to the chest. She had recognized his face, a man from her past, someone she thought she had left behind. He had been a part of the illegal wildlife trade that she had once helped dismantle. He was supposed to be in prison. But now he was here, and his sinister smirk told her everything. She had been brought into this mission not by chance, but by design. She was a target. Her heart sank as the pieces began to fit together. Her past was catching up with her in the worst possible way. "Why are you here?" Emma asked again, her voice cracking with emotion as she processed the situation. The leader's smirk faded, and his eyes hardened. "You've been a thorn in our side for too long, Emma. Thought we could just let you walk away. But no, you're too valuable." Emma's breath hitched. "Valuable?" she asked, confused. The poacher laughed darkly. "You've been rescuing animals, but you've also been hunting us. What if we turned you into our bait?" The words struck her like a punch in the gut. They had been using her all along, her reputation, her skill, her knowledge. She was a pawn in their game. Her mission wasn't just about saving an elephant. It was about setting her up, making her believe she was the hero, when in reality, she was being drawn deeper into the trap. Emma took a step back, her mind racing, struggling to process the betrayal. She thought she was saving lives, but she had unknowingly become part of a larger scheme. The poacher took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "You should have stayed out of it, Emma," he said coldly. "You're just like the rest of them, too naive to see that the world doesn't work in black and white." Emma gritted her teeth, trying to push past the betrayal. Her mind flashed back to the day she first started rescuing wildlife. She had promised herself that she would stop the trafficking of animals at any cost. But now, everything she believed in felt like it was crumbling before her eyes. Lucas stepped forward, his voice tense. "We need to move now," he warned. But Emma stayed rooted to the spot, her gaze fixed on the poacher. "Not yet," she said, her voice quiet but firm. She had to confront this, had to face the truth about how deep this situation really went. The poacher's words had shattered her, but they wouldn't break her. Not now. She wasn't done yet. "Emma," Lucas called urgently, "we can't stand here and do nothing. We're outnumbered." Emma nodded, the reality of the situation settling in. The poachers had planned this all along, to use her as a pawn in a dangerous game. "We'll take them out," she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced. There was no more room for doubt, no more time for hesitation. She had to fight back. She had to finish what she started. Emma turned toward the poacher leader, her eyes narrowing with resolve. "If you think for 1 second that I'll let you walk away with this elephant, you're wrong," she said, her voice hard. The poacher leader raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Emma signaled to Lucas, and they both moved into position, ready to fight for the elephant's freedom, and for their own. The first shot rang out, piercing the tension. Emma ducked instinctively, and the poachers scattered, trying to gain the upper hand. The world erupted into chaos. Lucas lunged forward, tackling one of the poachers to the ground, while Emma took cover behind a large tree, her mind focused. She had fought in countless rescues, but this was different. The poachers weren't just threats to wildlife. They were threats to everything she had worked for, everything she believed in. She had to stop them, now. The jungle roared around them as the poachers fired again, but Emma was already moving, faster than she had ever moved before. It wasn't just about saving the elephant anymore. It was about protecting everything she stood for. The air was thick with tension as the fight escalated. Emma ducked behind a tree, heart pounding. The poachers were getting closer, their movements calculated and dangerous. Lucas had taken out 2 of them, but the odds were still stacked against them. Emma's breath came in shallow gasps, but she forced herself to stay calm. The elephant was now just a few yards away, its injured leg still preventing it from moving quickly. Emma glanced at Lucas, who was crouched behind a boulder, preparing for the next attack. "We can't keep doing this," he called out. "The storm's making it worse." Emma nodded, eyes narrowing as she watched the poachers advance. The situation was dire, but they couldn't afford to give up. "We'll make it out of here," she said firmly, though doubt clouded her mind. If they didn't act soon, the poachers would have the upper hand. With a silent nod, Emma and Lucas exchanged a final glance before charging, ready for one last push to escape the jungle alive with the elephant. The silence before the storm was shattered as Lucas surged forward, taking out one of the poachers with swift precision. Emma followed close behind, her heart racing. As they moved, the poachers scattered, firing randomly. The jungle had become a deadly battlefield, each shot a reminder of how far they had come. Emma felt the weight of every decision, every risk they had taken to get this far. She had never been in a fight like this before. Her hands were steady, her mind clear, but fear was creeping in, fear that the cost of failure would be too high. She glanced at the elephant, its wounded leg trembling beneath it, as if it knew what was at stake. "We're almost there," she yelled to Lucas, the words fueled by a final burst of energy. They were too close now to back down. The poachers were in their sights, and there was no turning back. The sound of gunfire echoed in the jungle, but Emma was undeterred. She reached the edge of the clearing where the elephant was standing, its eyes wide with fear. Lucas had taken care of most of the poachers, but there were still a few left. Emma knew that if they didn't act now, the poachers would regroup. Without hesitation, she pulled out the tranquilizer gun she had kept hidden, aiming carefully. She steadied her breath and fired. The dart hit one of the remaining poachers, sending him stumbling to the ground. The jungle seemed to freeze for a moment. But the danger wasn't over. Emma looked around, seeing more poachers hiding in the shadows, ready to strike. She took a step forward, pulling the elephant behind her, ready to face the next wave of attacks. The poachers' resistance was waning, but Emma couldn't afford to celebrate yet. They still needed to get the elephant out of the jungle, and the river was swelling. Lucas motioned to the path ahead, where the rising water was already making it harder to move. "The river's too strong now," he said, grimacing. Emma looked at the elephant, its leg injured and its body trembling with exhaustion. She could see the pain in the animal's eyes. But there was no other option. "We move fast," she said firmly. She turned to the elephant, whispering, "It's time." With Lucas by her side, they guided the elephant through the muddy terrain, every step becoming harder as the rain intensified. The jungle was closing in on them, but they were determined to make it out alive. The roar of the river was deafening as Emma and Lucas reached the bank. The water was now too high to cross safely, but they had no choice. They couldn't turn back. Emma looked over at the elephant, its injuries still causing it pain, but it was standing tall. The battle wasn't over yet, but they had won the fight for survival. Emma stepped into the river, feeling the current push against her legs. "Hold on just a little longer," she whispered to the elephant. It took everything they had to fight through the storm and the rising river. But just as Emma thought they couldn't go any further, a large boat appeared on the horizon. Lucas called out, relief flooding his chest. The team had arrived, and with their help, they would make it out of the jungle alive. The elephant, though weary, was going home. They had saved it. Emma stood before the mirror in her chambers, the weight of her decision pressing heavily on her shoulders. The kingdom was fractured, and she was the one tasked with healing its wounds. She had fought for the throne, and now she would rule, but the price was greater than she had anticipated. "What kind of ruler will I be?" she whispered to her reflection, her dark eyes searching for answers. The faces of the people she had lost, the friends who had betrayed her, and the enemies she had defeated flashed before her eyes. The throne was hers, but at what cost? She knew the burden of leadership was not just about power, it was about making impossible choices, ones that would define her reign. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and determination, but Emma was resolute. She would rebuild the kingdom, not as a queen born from privilege, but as a ruler forged in battle and loss. The road ahead was uncertain, but she would not falter. As Emma sat at the head of the royal council, the tension in the room was palpable. Her trusted advisors, including the newly appointed Lord Benjamin, watched her every move. "You cannot rule a kingdom on mercy alone," Lord Benjamin said, his voice grave. "The people need to see strength, not compassion. If you show weakness, they will abandon you." Emma's gaze hardened, her fingers gripping the armrest of the throne. "Mercy is not weakness," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "It is the strength to forgive those who have wronged us and to build a future where justice prevails." She paused, allowing her words to settle in the room. "I will not become the ruler I despised. I will lead with fairness and strength, but not through fear." The advisors exchanged uncertain glances, but Emma's resolve was unwavering. She would not let the past shape her decisions. She would be her own ruler. That evening, Emma walked through the palace gardens, her mind racing with the weight of the council's words. She was no longer the girl who had once dreamed of wearing the crown. She had become something different, someone who had witnessed the brutality of war and the betrayal of those she trusted. The gardens, once a place of peace, now seemed like a battlefield of their own, with every decision a potential threat. "They're right, you know," Thomas said, his voice breaking through her thoughts. "You can't show mercy to everyone. Some will use it against you." Emma stopped in her tracks, turning to face him. "I refuse to rule with fear," she said, her voice steady. "I will be the queen my people need, not the one they fear." Thomas nodded, though his expression was filled with concern. "Just be careful, Emma," he warned. Not all of them want what's best for you. The next morning Emma sat at her desk, sifting through reports from the kingdom's military commanders. Her forces had secured the borders, but there were still pockets of resistance. As she read through the dispatches, a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Your Majesty, it's time," Lord Benjamin said, entering the room with a look of grave importance. "The first meeting of the new council begins now." Emma stood, her resolve returning. "Prepare them," she replied, her voice calm but firm. As she walked toward the door, she knew this moment was crucial. The new council, a blend of old allies and new faces, would be the foundation of her reign. She had to unite them, forge a new path for the kingdom, or risk undoing everything she had fought for. Stepping into the hall, Emma took a deep breath, ready to face the challenge. The council meeting was unlike anything Emma had experienced. She sat at the head of the table, surrounded by advisors and military leaders. Each person spoke with authority, but Emma's voice was the one that carried weight. "We rebuild this kingdom not on the backs of fear or power, but on justice and unity," Emma declared, her voice resonating in the room. "I will not be swayed by those who wish to divide us. Together we are stronger." The murmurs around the table grew louder as her words sank in. Some were skeptical, others supportive, but Emma knew that her reign had just begun. There would be no turning back now. She had taken the first step toward creating the kingdom she had always dreamed of, and despite the obstacles ahead, she would not falter. The jungle was quiet now, the chaos of the past few days replaced by an eerie stillness. Emma stood at the edge of the clearing, gazing out toward the horizon, the golden light of the early morning casting a warm glow over the landscape. The elephant, though still weak, was no longer the same frightened creature that had been trapped in the snare. It was standing tall, its eyes calm as it surveyed its surroundings. Emma had done her best. She had saved the elephant, but the journey had changed her in ways she couldn't fully understand. Her fight had never been just about saving one animal. It was about something bigger, something deeper. The jungle was a place of constant survival, and she had become a part of that fight. As she stood there, Lucas walked up behind her, his presence a reminder of the team that had helped her. "You did it," he said quietly. Emma didn't respond immediately, her gaze still fixed on the elephant. After a long pause, she spoke. "It's not just about the victories, is it?" she asked softly. "It's about the fight, the journey, and the lives that we touch along the way." Lucas nodded in agreement. "It's about making a difference, no matter how small." Emma finally turned away from the horizon, her face filled with quiet resolution. "I thought once we got the elephant to safety it would all feel different," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it doesn't. It just feels like another beginning." Lucas smiled gently, the weight of their journey clear in his eyes. "It's because you're not just saving animals, Emma, you're saving pieces of yourself with every mission." The words hung in the air, and Emma took them in, letting them settle deep within her. The elephant was now safe, but Emma knew that her journey wasn't over. It had never been about one animal, or even a series of animals. It was about the path she had chosen, a path that was always filled with uncertainty, but one that was fueled by her deep love and respect for the creatures she fought to protect. She glanced at the elephant one last time. It was free now, and so was she. The sound of the elephant's deep, steady breaths filled the air as Emma walked over to it. She crouched beside the animal, her hand gently resting on its side. The elephant shifted slightly, but its trust in Emma was palpable. It had been a long road, but they had both made it through the storm. "You're safe now," Emma whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. The moment felt surreal. She had spent so much time focused on the goal, on saving this one life. But now, in this quiet moment, she realized that it was never just about the outcome. It was about the journey, the connections, and the trust she had built along the way. Emma stood up, looking out at the jungle once more. It would always be a part of her, and she would always be a part of it. "We did good," she said, her voice steady with finality. As Emma turned to leave the clearing, she felt a sense of finality settle over her. The mission was complete, and the elephant was safe. Lucas caught up with her, his voice low but filled with understanding. You know, you're never going to be the same after this. Emma looked up at him, smiling softly. I don't think I want to be. The truth was, this mission had changed her. It had changed the way she viewed the world, the jungle, and herself. She was no longer just a rescuer. She was a part of the ecosystem, a small but significant piece in a much larger puzzle. We make a difference, Emma said quietly. One animal at a time. Lucas nodded, his eyes shining with respect. And sometimes, that's enough. As they walked together back toward the team, the jungle around them seemed less ominous and more full of possibility. As Emma and Lucas reached the edge of the jungle, they stopped and looked back one last time. The elephant was still visible in the distance, a symbol of the success they had fought so hard for. Emma felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that she had done everything in her power to give this animal a chance at life. It's done, Emma said softly, almost to herself. Lucas glanced at her, a knowing smile on his face. No, it's never really done. It's just another beginning. Emma smiled, the weight of his words settling in. The journey was always evolving, always continuing. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Emma felt the promise of new beginnings, of more animals to save, and of a life still to be lived. With one last look at the jungle, she turned and walked forward. The fight would never end, and she was ready for it.